Thank you very much. I suspect that as the afternoon rolls on, this room is going to get very full. So this is your one and only opportunity to select first-class seating. It's open, it's available. This is your last chance. I just wanted to mention something about tomorrow. I was originally going to say this at the very end of today, but I know what happens at the end, and when Kate Winslet and Mark walk off the stage, everyone's going to stand up and start talking and walking, so I'm going to tell you now, so you might want to pass this on. Tomorrow morning, slightly different format, at 9:30 in the morning, we've got 3 concurrent industry roundtable sessions, and they're in the rooms Fairmont, Festival 1 and Festival 2, and Salon Mistral, okay? Now, the timely topics to choose from, and you can make a choice on these roundtables: aging, how to disrupt it before it disrupts economic growth, wouldn't we all love that? Cities, what do you want your future city to be? And the payment ecosystem, how might we pay in the future? So that's all tomorrow, those roundtables. And if you have friends who aren't here, please share that information with them. All right, we are going to kick off this quite marvelous afternoon looking at something so powerful in the business space, and it's mentoring. We're going to delve into how mentoring works and what it can offer both sides of the mentoring equation. And to tell you much more about this, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage, along with his wonderful guests, EY's Global Leader for Entrepreneurship, Bryan Pearce.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, you're on the left.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it's my great pleasure to conduct this conversation around the importance of mentoring and how we as established business people and entrepreneurs can really help to bring along the next generation. And it's a real privilege to have 2 very important guests with me this afternoon. One is a friend that I've known for a while in Ashish Thakkar, and Rona Kotecha leads the work of the Mara Foundation as well. So we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of months as we've been looking ahead to this, and it's my absolute delight to welcome Rona as well. Just a couple of words on Ashish. Ashish is the founder of the Mara Group and as well the founder of Mara Foundation. The Mara Group today is a multi-sector industrial business that is based out of Dubai and out of Uganda and throughout Africa. They employ some 11,000 people in sectors as diverse as technology, real estate, banking, and certainly a number of new things that are coming that Ashish will tell us a little bit down the road. In addition to his corporate responsibilities leading Mara Group, Ashish is also the chair of the United Nations Foundation Global Entrepreneurship Council and many other groups both around the world and throughout Africa that he brings leadership to. So great to have Ashish Thakkar. Rona Kotecha leads the Mara Foundation, and we have partnered with the Mara Foundation at EY for a number of years, specifically around the mentorship role and Mara Mentor. And so it's really great to have Rona here to be able to talk about the what's and whys of mentoring, and to also share some of the findings from the Global Entrepreneurship Index that they have produced just recently, because they really are some great insights into the importance of having strong ecosystems. So before we kick into the formal conversation, I'd love to just show a brief video that gives a little bit more background on Mara Group and Mara Foundation. Let's see the video, please.
Growth worldwide. 20 years
Excellent. So, Ashish, you started Mara Group when you were 15 years old. Well, I suspect most of us in the audience were, going to the high school prom or, playing sports or, chasing somebody around that we had a romantic interest in. So tell us about, your decision to found a company and especially what was it that helped you as a 15-year-old learn, what this is all about and how to get started.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you all. And more importantly, thank you for the first time ever. I'm actually on the panel with my much, much, much older sister, Rona, who we have never had the opportunity to be on a panel together, so it's great to be here together, so thank you. So obviously we were refugees in Rwanda as a family, and coming out of that and literally seeing my family had lost everything, I then took that loan and set up Mara Group. And the one thing that I wish that I had access to was mentorship. And my parents were amazing, amazing mentors and still are. But there was always that ability to be able to connect with entrepreneurs who have been there and done that. And my method of doing so at that stage was reading biographies about other amazing entrepreneurs and just kind of trying to see how I can connect those dots to what's applicable to me. And hence, since then, it's been a very, very large passion for us.
That's great. And when all of those biographies that you read, is there any that stand out, or who do you sort of look on and say, that person really inspired me, or those people really inspired me the most?
Yeah, there were loads of them, but the one particular one that really, really stood out was obviously Sir Richard Branson, who remains an inspiration and was a phenomenal leader and just multi-sector and multi-geography, which resonated with what Mara was doing. So still remains that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and so I think this is a great lesson for a lot of the entrepreneurs in the room, that if somebody asks you to tell your story, to be featured in an article or in a biography or something like that, don't be afraid to do it, because it really does have an impact on people that are trying to figure out what all of these means. Ashish was a judge at the world level 2 years ago, back in 2015. And did a great job. I had the honor to be in the room while they were doing their deliberations, so that was great. But what stands out to you from that experience as the attributes that really make for a great world-class entrepreneur, and how might we learn from that as a group?
It was an absolute honor, obviously, serving as a judge here 2 years ago. Apart from the fact that didn't see much of the sunshine, but now I'm taking advantage of that this time. But it was a phenomenal experience, and just being able to meet and learn these unbelievable entrepreneur stories. And I think the thing that, to me, that I think resonates the most is just that authenticity of really, you can really tell when somebody is extremely passionate and means what they do. And the whole, doing good and doing well combination of how we can actually do extremely well for our shareholders, for our teams, but actually make a difference in the countries that we operate in the communities that we function in, is equally an important angle. So that combination. So
the doing well and doing good is really a great segue into the foundation that you created back in 2009, and obviously a big part of that was mentoring. So how did you sort of get into the concept of mentoring being important and transition that into the foundation? And then we'll come to Rona after that and hear a little bit more about the particulars of Mara Mentor.
So it began, obviously, it was always a passion. And when you think about African youth, I'm a fourth generation East African, and just seeing that we have such a young demographic across our continent, yet a lot of our young entrepreneurs, their parents are either civil servants or they're farmers. So who do they turn to for advice? The education system doesn't teach entrepreneurship.
Sure.
So we realized then, and being a school dropout and the most uneducated person in this room, I thought, informal education is a very, very important piece. And by informal education, we mean mentorship. So that's when we started off with a one-on-one speed dating mentorship program where we got 60 mentees. We were oversubscribed on the mentee side, and on the mentor side, we were having a bit of a struggle getting people in. So We got all of our service providers, bankers, insurance companies, anybody we were using through all of our companies at that time. We called everyone and said, you know, if you still want our business, you better show up tomorrow. And we got 60 mentors to come, and we did the speed dating, and it was fantastic. And then I met with about 30, 35 of the mentees thereafter just to understand what was your experience like. And they gave me 2 pieces of feedback which kind of knocked me back a little bit. And that was, firstly, you know, this was great, but we would love to have global entrepreneurs as well to get a different perspective apart from just the local one. And here I was thinking, you know, I just about blackmailed everyone I knew just to get them here.
How do you get the global ones?
How do you get the global ones? And then they were like, and another thing, Ashish. And I was like, yes, tell me. And they're like, we want more than one mentor because, you know, you're great, but you kind of did it in this sector at this time, and we want more than one opinion. And that's when it really kind of dawned on us that we need to kind of take this digital in order to really, really reach the scale that we wanted to.
But it was about scale as well as sort of a breadth of expertise, so it was a very important part, which I think comes true in a lot of mentoring experiences. So from that realization, I guess the mentoring, Mera Mentors and Mera Foundation was formed. So maybe you can tell us a little, Rona, about the objectives of the foundation and a little bit more specific about Mera Mentor, and then we'll dive in a little bit to the Entrepreneurship Index.
Sure. No, it's great to be here. Thank you, Bryan. Before I kick off, I do want to kind of mention that when we were doing the prep, you know, from London and our various kind of geographical locations, Bryan did ask, you know, assume that I was younger. So Ashish, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. The much older bit.
Well, I have to share the conversation in the green room before this because, you know, we were looking on the news of what's going on in the UK where Rona now lives, and you know, she was bemoaning the fact that the pound was down, and Ashish was saying, well, actually, living in Dubai, I kind of like the fact that the pound is down now. It's a lot cheaper when I come to London. So that sibling rivalry is still very much there.
So the objectives of the Mera Foundation are to enable, empower and inspire entrepreneurs to start and scale their businesses across industries and geographies. Like Ashish said, we wanted to have a greater outreach for our entrepreneurs to connect with more mentors globally, with a particular focus on youth and women entrepreneurs. We started as an Africa initiative, and now we're a global platform. And we have over 850,000 users on the platform. So that's kind of the objectives around why we started. Now, Mera Mentor, the platform itself, you can gain insights as an entrepreneur, you can expand your network, guidance on how to scale your business. It's not restrictive or rigid in the sense that you can connect to one mentor or several mentors, dependent on the stage of your business and the skill set that you require at that particular time. So it's very open. The reason we think it's important to have a platform like this, it enables innovative ideas to materialize. There's lots of entrepreneurs that, especially in emerging markets that are there, that don't know what to do about their idea and how to initiate it. They may lack business acumen. It also enables those local connections, which are vitally important, but also gives you those global insights that are, you know, you can share learnings, also things that have been done in other countries. You can learn from that and not make those same mistakes. Enables job creation. When you're enabling entrepreneurs, it enables job creation in their local economies and also strengthens those economies. The reason we have a particular focus on youth is that we feel that there are high unemployment rates in Africa around youth, and youth lacking aspirations, youth having no direction can actually lead to a lot of political and, you know, social instability in a country. Now, the reason we focus on women is we do feel that women are underrepresented globally. And also in emerging markets, when you do empower women, you're empowering girls, you're creating an environment where it is okay to remain in education, follow a strong career path, or even become successful entrepreneurs.
So the numbers of attraction to Mera Mentor and to the app, when I first heard them, I checked to make sure I wasn't reading, you know, too many zeros into the number, but you have some almost 850,000 people that are registered users of the Mera Mentor service. And I think about 30% of those are serving as mentors and about 70% as people that want to be mentored. And it's really remarkable. And a lot of that is Africa-based, not exclusively, but a lot of based in Africa. And of course, for those of you that were in the Africa panel this morning, they really highlighted the importance, as you have, Rona, of youth in Africa. But how can the people in this room, really get involved in helping? It sounds like you've got, almost an insatiable demand for people that want to mentor. And I think we met at breakfast, one of the things is really how do you get the expertise outside of some of the markets so that they can learn from people that are operating more in established markets or other emerging markets besides where they live. But how can people help?
Sure. Please do register on Mara Mentor. It's mentor.mara.com, and we'd love you to come on as mentors, because I think it's really important to share your experience, instill those kind of inspirations, and you aim higher once you've shared stories. When you've learned from other entrepreneurs, you tend to it kind of gives you that charge to kind of go out and do more, to kind of go through to fight those challenges, navigate those challenges well, and find opportunity. But it's by hearing your stories, share your insights on Mara Mentor, connect daily to a mentee or whenever you can. It's not very intrusive, it's a great platform, and even by sharing, some of your experiences will, you don't know who it will impact and how it will impact them.
If I can just add to that, I mean, the other huge advantage, obviously, for mentors is to learn the geographical differences. When a lot of the mentees are from across Africa, and Sugan and team did a fantastic job on the Africa panel earlier, but the fact that 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa, it's such a diverse continent in itself that really communicating with different mentees from across the continent, you start understanding the geographical differences as well. I mean, we're in 25 countries as a group across the continent with physical presence, but we're still learning the continent, and that's the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly, I've registered for Mara Mentor. I'm as a mentor now, so it's very straightforward, very simple. It does not take long at all to get registered, but obviously the key part is being able to be there for those people when they have questions and interest. So I would encourage you to do that and be willing to serve that way. How is a good mentorship relationship created from the experiences that you've seen both in the digital world as well as in person? What are some of the things that are ingredients for success?
So we've created guidelines on Mara Mentor just to help the entrepreneur and also help the mentor gain the most out of the mentoring relationship, but also the platform. So some of the things that I'll just go through so I don't miss any. But just some of the things that we recommend is getting to know each other, your businesses and your backgrounds. It actually helps build trust between the mentor and the entrepreneur. Openness. When an entrepreneur is open, the mentor can then give more and also look at areas where the mentor has a gap, a skill gap that the mentor can then tap into. Maintain professionalism is one thing we've got on there also. Define expectations on both sides, because normally a mentoring relationship is two-way. The mentor actually gains quite a bit from the relationship also. Reciprocal communication, listening actively. Also, a collaborative approach to problem solving. So not the mentor giving the answers, but guiding, steering the entrepreneur to kind of work it out for themselves. Goal setting with timelines, also periodic reviews of those timelines. It also instills accountability. Maintain positivity, give constructive criticism, but also maintain positivity. Praise from the mentor is key, and also gratitude from the mentee. The mentor is giving up their time to actually upskill you, so do take time to be grateful. I also feel it's very, very important to connect to more than one mentor. The insights that you can gain from different people, it's so powerful. Connect to a local and global mentor, which we've touched on before. And also, don't assume that your mentor needs to be older than you. I mean, Ashish is my mentor, and obviously, as you know, I'm much, much, much older. Also, a mentor has to have an open mind, because this is not their journey, this is the entrepreneur's journey. So to have that open mind. Mentees, we always say, respect the mentor's time. Also, I think one thing is remain humble when you're mentoring. Leave that ego behind. I think it's really depleting confidence when a mentee is asking for that guidance and that ego kicks in. No matter how successful you are, remain humble.
Yeah. The answer to the question often is inside the mentee, right? It's just the mentor's role to kind of help extract that from them. So I know we'll talk a little bit about the study, and certainly there have been many studies, including some that we've done, some that you've done, that highlight the importance of funding, obviously, but particularly the challenges of funding in any early stage entrepreneurial company. And one of the things we know is that funding without some kind of mentorship or role around the entrepreneur is often wasted money. Can you talk a little bit about what the research shows around the connection between funding and this type of support?
Sure. I do feel that the informal education part is so important, so mentoring. As I've mentioned, all the reasons why, it enables the entrepreneur, in certain ways that they wouldn't get that chance. So I think, yes, you have the finance there, but do you have the industry insights? Do you have the business acumen? Are your financial literacy up to speed? All those things I think are so key and vital for an entrepreneur to succeed, even if you have the seed capital.
So you have a bank, Ashish, that was formed in part to address that issue, and one of the things we talked about at breakfast was how do you create the credentialing or the badging, as Tammy mentioned it the other day, so that when that startup entrepreneur, young entrepreneur goes into an investor or into a lender, they can say, listen, I've done all of this sort of homework and a credentialization to be a better bet for you to make.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think, when if you take a step back and think about the whole ecosystem, it is really an ecosystem approach. And I think mentorship is obviously one critical piece of this ecosystem, but at the same time, it's also the access to capital, and then the public policy side of things. So when you think about the access to capital, the fact that banks need to lend more to businesses is such a critical thing. And I've been on the receiving side of financial services, and at the age of 15, 16, I tried shaving earlier, I tried putting on a suit, I put on a deeper voice, and I still got rejected. It just didn't work, and hence I dress like this now. But so the whole point was when Bob Diamond and I, we partnered and created Atlas Mara, which is our bank, our African bank. The whole thesis was, how do we be a bank for business? The typical and traditional banking model across the continent has been taking customers' deposits, putting it into government treasury, making 1,000 to 1,200 basis point spreads, and why do they need to lend to businesses? But if you believe in Africa the way we do, then those kind of spreads are not going to exist down the line. So how do you really lend to businesses? And that becomes a critical piece. So our bank today we did 9 acquisitions over the last 3 years and in 7 countries across Africa. But the whole focus is lending to businesses. And as Mara Mentor, the next evolution we see happening is also how do we kind of bridge that gap? And the thinking which Rona has spent a lot of time on, is thinking through how do we use this data and actually almost create an option for create a credit rating score that you get banks to pre-approve an amount of facility that they would provide. So this the whole ecosystem, tying it in together, is such a critical piece. And obviously access to capital is 2 forms: debt, which we've spoken about, but there's also the equity piece.
Yes.
And that's angel investing and venture capital needs to be encouraged, which over a period of time will come in.
Excellent. Ron, any other comments on the credentializing? Because I think that's some of the evolution of Bara Mentor as well, is how do you do more of the how-tos and building that into the capabilities of the app so that you can help to credentialize some of these entrepreneurs and educate them along the way.
Absolutely. We're launching our new platform in 3 weeks' time, which also integrates a complete how-to series on there, which goes through things like business plans, that sort of thing. And we've got a business course on there for startups. So all this will kind of, you know, when you're pitching to a bank and you're taking your business plan, when you've gone through all these processes, it validates it further. So to show that you have been mentored, you have gone through this kind of skill building process, and I think that's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. So we've talked a little bit about mentoring and funding, but there's other ways that people in this room can really help to deal with things that are important in the ecosystem, right? So Ashish, I know one of the things that you're very committed to are the UN Strategic Development Goals that were passed last summer. Some of you will recall at World Entrepreneur of the Year last year, we had the opportunity to have you digitally sign a petition in support of those goals, and happy to report that they were passed. And maybe you could just remind us what those were and how people can still be involved in advocacy around things that matter to the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, the Millennium Development Goals that existed previously were more at a 30,000 feet level, but the new Sustainable Development Goals that were passed in 2015 are really focused on tangible outcomes. And there are 17 goals that were passed by all the heads of state at the UN General Assembly. And this little pin represents the different colors in the goals. But the important thing that I like to highlight is the fact that these goals are so interconnected. Goal number 8 is about entrepreneurship, and that directly has an impact on goals 7 and 9. But if you do that properly, you directly have an impact on goals 1 and 2, which is no hunger, no poverty. And as a result, if you're doing that properly, you know, you're going to have goals 5 and 10, which is gender equality, reducing inequalities in general. And all of that's going to happen through goal 17, which is about partnerships. So it's very interconnected. It's not like it's 17 goals. And obviously, it's our job as citizens to make sure that our countries are taking this seriously. But at the same time, it's our job as well as entrepreneurs to actually ensure that our businesses are encompassing this, because it's such a critical thing. And it's really, the whole theme is let's leave no one behind. And 2030 is when the goals come in. And in Africa, I'm very, very pleased that in Rwanda, we've created something called the Sustainable Development Goals Center for Africa, which is basically measuring all the 54 countries' progress on the SDGs to see how far we've gone, and really monitoring it on a live basis in order to ensure that not after 15 years do we say, oh, whoops, we missed that. You know, it's kind of something that we're really on top of, which is chaired by President Kagame of Rwanda, but has another 5 heads of state, and I'm on the board of that as well, and a few other people. And it's phenomenal that Africa's been the first center globally to kind of come into play, which really measures and ensures that we're going to leave no one behind.
It's awesome. And are we making good progress against those?
I think the commitment and the energy has been phenomenal from not only governments, but also from the private sector. And the public. And I think this just needs to continue, and now we need to really measure ourselves according to the milestones that need to be achieved in order to ensure that we are on track.
So it seems like for people in this room, other entrepreneurs, there's a couple of things that they can do. One is really look at these young entrepreneurs in your market, and can they become part of your supply chain at all? I mean, there's nothing like a customer for a young company or a startup, and certainly they're very hungry to work with you, so that might be one. And then I guess advocacy really with governments and policymakers around the things that are smart to do that will help advance these goals. Just any experiences or case studies that either of you have seen where those things, or mentorship or funding, all kind of combine to really make an impact in an entrepreneur's life?
Sure. Through our mentorship platform, we found, some of the feedback that we got that was, a mentor validated the processes, validated their business plan, which then gave them, that option to kind of go full steam ahead. Also, environmental assessment, what is the entrepreneurial environment like? Is this particular industry going to succeed, or are we saturated? A mentor gave those kind of insights to one of the entrepreneurs. And they also looked at low-hanging fruits. What are the quick wins that we can make to actually help you scale? And the mentor then looked at different business models within that company, and then helped the entrepreneur actually scale a lot faster, but also in a very positive way. Yeah, you wanna-
If I can add, I mean, some of the other case study that we've got is, which is the third pillar, which I talked about, which is public policy, is the index that we launched, which
Yes.
is the AJT Global Entrepreneurship Index. And we ranked 85 countries around the world according to how entrepreneurially friendly they are towards SMEs, young entrepreneurs, and women entrepreneurs specifically. And it's complementary to the World Bank's Doing Business Index, but it's a lot deeper in terms of, access to capital and, laws, etc. So one perfect example is that, every country talks about innovation, but a lot of countries don't have IP laws in place, etc. So what's been amazing on this, we haven't been advocating as of yet to any countries, but we've given tangible recommendations on things they can do to jump up in the ranking and make a difference for young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs in their country. But 3 countries actively reached out to us, wanting us to actually hold a workshop with them and implement some of those changes so they can quickly make a difference in their countries, but also jump up in the ranking. So that was very, very encouraging to see. And those 3 countries are UAE, Ghana, and Rwanda.
So who are the leaders in the league tables, if you will, and what is it that's really making them special, do you think, in terms of their approach?
So Singapore was number 1, and the whole framework was very, very well established. I mean, across Africa, Namibia was number 1, which was quite surprising to me, to us.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see that the right ecosystem does exist, and then it's a matter of spurring it, and that's when the whole access to capital, etc., needs
Yes.
to kick in. So it's been a very, very interesting exercise, and we've tried to keep it extremely practical, which Rona and her team have done a great job on.
Great. Were there any other surprises in the research, Rona, that you looked at, or any things that really stood out in the index as being important?
Well, what Ashish touched on the kind of policy, but we also looked at infrastructure, finance, entrepreneurial environment, and education. Now, we looked at areas where literacy rates were low, gender inclusion under education. Under infrastructure, we also looked at access to internet. When you look at e-commerce, when you look at digitally enabled businesses, it's vital that we do look at this component.
Right.
And also infrastructure as a whole. How is that country faring up on that? We touched on availability of credit under the finance pillar and also equity. What else did we look at? So there were 5 pillars that we assessed, but then we took a deeper dive into each pillar.
And will that be updated on a regular basis then? Or?
We're looking to do that on an annual basis.
Annually, okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, I'm going to come to you as an audience for questions in just 1 or 2 moments here, but I think it's really been a great discussion about what we can do to help, not only help with the good work at Mara Foundation, but also help in our respective markets, to really make the entrepreneurial ecosystem stronger and hopefully strengthen education systems. There's so many different ways to get involved. So I guess my question, maybe I can start with Rona and then go to Ashish, but what's sort of next for the foundation, and indeed what's next for the very impressive activities of the Mara Group overall? So Rona, maybe we'll lead off with you.
Sure. We want to create more of an impact through Mara Foundation. So with Mara Mentor, with the index, we want to create a greater impact. We want to really develop the advocacy piece through the Global Entrepreneurship Index. And really grow the platform, because I think it's key to increase the number of mentors that we have, the engagements that we have on the platform, and create more tools around that ecosystem that support entrepreneurship. So the credit rating system, there's so many ways that we are kind of looking through, researching at the moment, that will add components to the Mara Mentor platform that will enable entrepreneurship further.
Well, I look forward to exploring ways to team with you on that as well, so that'll be great. Ashish, what's next for Mara Group? I'm sure nothing's going to slow down knowing you. So,
So the Mara Group it turns 21 years old this year, and
happy birthday.
thank you. As cheesy as it sounds, I think we're just getting started, and it really does feel that way. We've got an exciting partnership with GE called Lionworks Capital, where we're setting up an Africa infrastructure investment company. And the Mara Group has been quite focused around the whole e-commerce enabling ecosystem in Africa. The fact that we're going to have 700 million smartphones in Africa by 2020. online shopping was $1.5 billion last year. In the next 8 years, it's going to be 50 times that. And I don't think e-commerce is going to be a luxury, it's going to be a necessity. In Lagos, we have 20 million people, yet we have about 3-4 shopping malls. The only way retail is going to work is online. And the only way we're going to enable entrepreneurs in rural areas to sell not only nationally, but regionally and eventually globally is by creating the right e-commerce ecosystem that will enable them to market themselves, get payments, and then also get the last mile fulfillment done.
Sure.
So Mara Internet Holdings, which is our new holding company, is focused on exactly this.
Fantastic. No, that's great. So big opportunity, as we talked about this morning, we talked a lot about the size of the opportunity, and I think of what you're looking at there with the infrastructure fund and with the Internet Holdings business is looking at how do we really get the specific businesses lined up to support those opportunities. So
Absolutely.
That's exciting. Well, Mark, why don't I turn it over to you? Let's see if we have some questions from the audience. If not, I've got one or two more that we can cover here.
If you have a question, raise your hand and I will come and find you. I'm going to dip into the center of the room. No takers yet. Oh, here we go. There's
Over
one.
here.
That was good because I was going to ask one of mine. They're never very good.
I'm amazed about the Indians, Sorry. Stand up. I'm amazed about the Indians and, let's say, all the activities around, let's say, the whole deployment of your models around the globe and so on. So I just signed up to Mara Mentoring right now.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
While you were on, because let's say as an entrepreneur myself for 20 years and having worked very, very hard from scratch, from a garage basically, coming out now into the world with food solutions, actually enabling entrepreneurs to launch food products based on local manpower with high-level technology in Africa, in Asia, in India. I think it's amazing, and I actually wanted to share that 50 times of the new food products that are going to compete, the Nestle's, the Danones, the General Mills are going to be online and are going to be influencer branded and so on. So just wanted to thank you. I think it's amazing, and we would be very, very happy to help you and young entrepreneurs all over the world to launch their opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I'm going to ask one on mentoring, if I may. So mentoring in so many ways is about the relationship. It's a partnership. What happens if you are mentoring a young entrepreneur and the relationship isn't working? Should you, as the business leader, find a way to make it work, or should you let them go perhaps to someone else where the relationship might be better? Who's responsible for that decision?
I think it's both. I think it's also for the entrepreneur to understand that this relationship isn't working, and hence the platform's very open in terms of you can connect to more than one mentor. And that was one of the things that we touched on very early in our research, that chemistry is vital. As an entrepreneur, we do advise that they do seek more than one mentor, and if it's not working, then obviously move on to the next mentor, but also it's a mentor's responsibility to kind of highlight that maybe they don't have the correct skill set, or to identify that there may be certain challenges in working together, and that they may be better seeking another mentor to guide them.
A difficult conversation, but one worth having.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I'm looking for your hand raised high right at the back of the room. Thanks for that. Excuse me. It's a run.
Good afternoon, and blessings to you on your work. Fantastic. So excited. I'm Mike Caslin with GSEN Foundation. We're focused on social entrepreneurship in higher ed, so the mentoring component and all your tools, we'd love to talk with you offline.
Wonderful.
Part of that impact on faculty and students that are now in university that need so much of your help.
Thank you. It's
Bryan,
wonderful.
isn't it amazing how these events, we create these relationships, the network just keeps acting.
We have a new mentor, a new network person here. I thought it would be fun, Mark, to just do a straw poll. We don't need the app for this. How many people, 2 questions, okay? First question, how many people in their life have benefited in your career or in your business from someone who served as a mentor to you? Okay, just about everybody in the room. Second question, how many people are actively mentoring someone else in their life today? That's good. That's good. So I just think it underscores the importance of everything that you're doing here. So is there any more questions, Mark? Otherwise, oh, we have one over here. Jorge. Yes, this is the high performers over here.
Good afternoon, congratulations. I'm Jorge, I'm from Peru. I'm in the agribusiness, and Peru is in South America, by the way. I'm wondering, how do you deal with infrastructure? Because e-commerce is good, but when there's a lack of infrastructure, as we have it in Peru, for instance, how are you going to deliver the actual goods to the final consumer?
It's a fantastic question.
Do you feel that kind of threat? I mean, challenge, let's put it that way?
No, it's a very, very good question, and hence we've created this infrastructure partnership. But to specifically, I think you've raised something really important. The one thing about Africa, obviously, and this is an important fact, is that Africa is physically larger than North America, plus Western Europe, plus India, plus China. And you can throw in New Zealand, actually. And we're physically larger than all of those put together, right? So naturally, the infrastructure challenges are even greater in that respect, in terms of road, rail, and the ease of movement of goods. And then obviously, there's other infrastructure challenges, such as electricity. But those are all opportunities in our eyes. I think on the e-commerce side, the one thing we noticed as a big gap in the market, which was last mile logistics and the whole fulfillment space, right? So addresses, etc., don't exist everywhere, and how do you enable that? So we launched a pilot. It's a company called Mara Express. We launched it in the UAE as a pilot. It's been growing at about 20% month on month, because we got the online-offline combination. It's not a matter of just creating the right app. It's a matter of how you can really merge it together. So in the UAE, we've had phenomenal growth with that, and the whole idea was, actually, we weren't trying to create a full-fledged business there, but it became a full-fledged Middle Eastern business now. But the whole point is we're actually going to bring it to Africa and to solve exactly that issue, because today it's not being tackled in that manner. So brilliant question, and I think that's the opportunity that we're trying to take advantage of.
All right, well, listen, Ashish and Rona, thank you very much for being with me and being with our audience today, and that's certainly a heartfelt, sincere thanks, but even more important, thanks for everything you've done through Mara Foundation with 850,000 people around the world, and I know that number will continue to grow. So join me with thanking Ashish and Rona.
And to thank you, of course, to Bryan Pearce as well for running a great session. Bryan, thank you. We'll see you shortly. So we're just going to add a couple of seats to this set. And while we do, we were talking about listening. We heard this comment, active listening. I'm a huge fan of it, as you know, madam. But I found something very interesting out, the psychology of what an audience does when it listens to you as a speaker. If you have to stand up in front of your teams, in front of investors, or indeed in front of groups of possible people you might mentor, they listen to you in a certain way. And there are things you can do to improve the way they listen to you. And one of them, this is very powerful, you can try this in your next presentation, is you simply, and for no good reason at all, just pause for a moment. Your moment of silence has a profound emotional impact on the audience, and here's why. When you're presenting for a while, your audience, after 15 minutes, falls into a waking sleep. They do. It doesn't matter how good you are. They get used to your melody, the melody of your voice, the tone of how you speak. They get used to it. So every time that you just suddenly pause, it creates this moment that wakes the audience up. Half of them are thinking, oh, he was great. Has he finished? Oh, he's not finished. That's a risk. But the other half, who are suddenly woken up by your silence, they think, oh, the next thing is going to be interesting. Your job as a presenter is to ensure that the next thing actually is interesting. Because at that moment, they're all listening. See what I did there? That was very good. How are we doing over here? So one example, this is very interesting. So Oracle Software, big IT company, as you know, they ran an ad campaign a while ago. And at the end of the ad, there's a graphic, and it says, Oracle Software powers the internet, and it had a voiceover at the same time. And in a focus group, they decided to try something different. They put the logo up, but to silence. And they got a much bigger buy-in, simply because it was different. And people watching TV suddenly noticed that it had gone quiet. They read the logo, bigger impact. So there you go. That's my little communication lesson that quite brilliantly filled the time as we changed the setup here. So Let's move on. You know, despite uncertainty and massive geopolitical risk, which we discussed yesterday and in fact today, our EY growth barometer shows that an impressive 90% of companies, you might remember that from this morning, still expect to grow. So is there something that you guys know that perhaps we don't? Well, whatever the truth behind this number, we've now got a fascinating discussion, and I'm delighted to welcome to the stage, along with his panel, EY's global private equity leader, to introduce a conversation all about that incredible confidence level. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Herb Engert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Come on out, panel. See if we can keep everybody in order here. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. As Mark mentioned, my name's Herb Engert. I'm the Global Private Equity Sector Leader, and I'm really excited. It's been a great couple days. We've certainly learned a lot, and I think it's certainly been a crazy time in the world, as we've all heard the last couple days, starting with yesterday's panel on geopolitical uncertainty, which I think, I know I certainly enjoyed, and I think all of you did. But as Mark also mentioned, I think entrepreneurs are really unique. They actually are always, it's a different DNA, and we're going to uncover that a little bit here today and talk about growth amid uncertainty and how you uncover opportunities. So I'm really excited to be here with the panel, and I'm going to introduce them, and then we'll get right into the conversation. So first, we have Kara Golden. She's the CEO and founder of San Francisco-based Hint, which produces unsweetened flavored waters. And wow, there we go, the crowd, we got the fans. So I'll have you know, they were out there getting ready. They didn't bring us all the water we needed. So we may need some more Hint water up here on stage. Pomegranate's my favorite, but I will drink the cherry today. So
right on.
It's delicious. Anyways, the company sells its products through both major retailers like Target, Walmart, and Whole Foods, as well as through direct-to-consumer channels. The company was founded in 2005 and is based in San Francisco, has received venture funding from a number of prominent firms. Kara receives a number of awards all the time, and but one of note, the Huffington Post named her as one of the 6 disruptors in business alongside Mark Zuckerberg. So welcome, Kara. We're really excited to have you.
Thanks.
So to Kara's left, Linda Hassenfratz. So Linda is the CEO of Linamar Corporation, and Linamar's products provide light vehicle, commercial truck, off-highway, energy, and industrial OEM markets with powertrain systems. Linamar's revenues in 2016, correct me if I'm wrong, $6 billion. And Linda's had double-digit growth over the last 6 years, so she certainly knows something about the growth agenda. They're publicly listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Linamar was founded in 1966 by Linda's father, Frank, and Linda was named the CEO in 2002. A little over a year ago, and we're going to get into this a little bit, the company closed an acquisition of European auto parts maker Montupet SA for $882 million, the biggest acquisition in the company's 50-year history. So Linda's been named one of the Automotive News 100 leading women in each year of its publications. And in May of 2016, she, along with her father, was inducted into the Canadian Business Hall of Fame. And in 2014, we have to mention she was the Canadian Entrepreneur of the Year, EY Entrepreneur of the Year. So please welcome Linda. We're so delighted to have her. So next we have Atsushi Sato-san, who joined KKR in August 2015, is currently the chairman of KKR in Japan. He brought deep experience and knowledge of capital markets to his role, having served previously as the CEO of Japan Exchange Group, where he led the merger of Japan's 2 major exchanges, Tokyo and Osaka exchanges, building the world's 3rd largest platform behind New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. So we're really excited to have Sato-san with us. From 2003 to 2007, Sato-san was CEO of Industrial Revitalization Corporation of Japan as well, a government-sponsored private equity firm specialized in recapitalization and turnaround investments in distressed companies in the financial sector in particular. So please welcome Sato-san. We're so glad to have you. And lastly, but not least, Tom Meredith is a senior partner at Brightstar, member of the investment committee. He currently serves as chairman of the board of Global Resale, a Brightstar portfolio company. Tom served as the vice chairman of the board of Brightstar Corporation, different than Brightstar Capital, which was sold to SoftBank in 2014. He is the co-founder and chairman of the board of managers of Meritage Capital an investment management firm specializing in multi-manager hedge funds. Tom's career spans 35 years, although he looks so young, and includes extensive experience in corporate finance, manufacturing, finance, operations, and global financial markets. So prior to Meritage, he held various senior positions at Dell, including the CFO role. And prior to joining Dell, he was also VP and treasurer at Sun Microsystems. He's on numerous boards. Tom, I couldn't name them all, but welcome, Tom. He's got lots of insights and experience to share with us today. So please welcome Tom. Thank you for being here. So, and I feel like he's way down there. I swear to God, it feels like a long panel. All right. Well, anyways, we're going to get right into it. We are going to really try to focus, but keep us honest out in the audience. We're going to try to focus on actionable insights. You've heard a lot, but what we really want to do is start to unpack growth, how we access it. You know, obviously it's interesting times, but you know, we've had interesting times over the last several years. So, but really want to tap into all the knowledge and experience we have up in the panel. So Linda, I'm going to start with you. So, you know, 2016 was kind of an interesting year. The World Trade Organization obviously downgraded the forecast. They actually just actually in April expected a rebound for 2017 and 2018 up to 2.4 for the remainder of 2017. EY also did our latest capital confidence barometer and said 76% of global executives see the global economy as either stable or improving. So would you say you're part of the 76%, and just give us your oversight and insights as to your overall outlook on the market right now?
Absolutely. I definitely would be part of the 76%. I have a positive outlook, but then I almost always have a positive outlook. So yes, I think the economy looks to be at least stable and growing in some regions more so than others. But I think that what's more important than that is the addressable markets that each of us are addressing. So of course we want to have a stable economy that's a great foundation from which to grow. But that can't be the only driver of our growth. So if I look at the markets that we're focused on, which is primarily automotive and access, those markets were up around 2% last year. But our sales were up 20%, partially because of the acquisition of Mentee. But that was only actually a little bit less than half the story. And the reason is because our addressable market is growing. As you heard, our focus is on powertrain and driveline systems in vehicles, for instance. And that's an area of the vehicle that our customers, the automakers, are largely doing themselves. In fact, they do about 70% of that work themselves. But with each new platform, they're outsourcing a little bit more of what is a $500 billion market. Therefore, our addressable market is growing each year, and that's what's allowing us to grow at above market rates. And further, even in an environment of flat or even a slight decline in our market, we would anticipate continuing to grow.
Oh, wow. That's great. Other thoughts? Tom, what do you think about the market right now? Are you in the 76%?
I am definitely part of the 76%, and I like to have...
Do we have, wait, Tom, do we have Tom's mic on? Go ahead, Tom. See.
Do we have my mic on?
Oh, we haven't got his mic. His mic's off.
Can you talk louder? Does anybody have a handheld?
It's on, but it's not working.
All right, why don't we go, Kara, do you have thoughts on the economy? If we could get a handheld at least, if we can't get them turned on. Kara, your thoughts on the 76%, are you in it?
So I think as it relates to entrepreneurs, there's no better time for entrepreneurs to actually go into these environments and create change. So I don't believe that in a recession that there's no better business than entrepreneurial businesses to actually go in and create change. And we've seen this over and over again throughout the years where you absolutely need entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial companies to go in and disrupt and actually create change in order to create jobs, in order to actually create revenue into streams that really need it.
All right, use the R word. I don't think we're there just yet, at least not in the U.S. So
Okay.
let's stay away from the R word. We're going to get there a little bit later because I think there are some concerns about that, at least in the U.S. market. But Sato-san, what about you? What are your thoughts about the outlook right now? Positive?
Also,
I'm positive side, but I'm not too much optimistic about the current situation because, as you know, we are at the stage of the cyclical recovery with euphoria. So thanks for the very unusual money supply by the central bankers all over the world. We are now expecting the drifting the recovery of the economy. But if the economy recovers too fast and hot, I think central bankers are forced to raise their interest rate
So I can
back.
do Q&A.
Mark, I think you got your mic on. You might have Tom's mic. So anyways, if we could turn Mark off. All right, keep going, Sato-san, sorry.
So that naturally I share with the positive view, but
Okay.
I'm very careful on this stage.
Okay, fair enough. Tom, lastly, you.
So as I started to say earlier, I am part of the 76%. I do have a lot of confidence about the current trajectory of our economy in terms of confidence and business confidence. I would call out that I spent the last 35 years of my career in finance and technology, and actually the improvements in productivity we'll see from technological enhancements, including AI, VR, and AR, amongst many other technologies, are so deflationary in terms of employment that what's going to happen is the easing will continue, and the easing is equity globally in terms of easy money, and almost free money in some countries, is highly bullish for equities.
Okay, all right, well, great. So Sato-san, let me come to you on KKR. They've been very active in Japan as of late, and you recently announced a $2.3 billion deal for Hitachi's chip-making and video solutions unit. So what's driving some of the opportunities in Japan, and are there other regions where KKR sees differential opportunities around the world?
Well, in this just last 2 years, we invested about $7 billion worth of the money into Japanese PE market. Japanese managers or executives used to be very much preferable on the non-organic, growth, or rather organic growth.
Yep.
But we were suffering the very long-last low productivity, low profit margin. So we are suffering the low growth of the GDP for past 20 years.
Yep.
That was killing our total economy or competitiveness in the world. So we are now focusing on to improve this productivity of each high-tech company. Then they are very gradually changing their mind, the strategy to inorganic type of growth policy.
Yep.
So I think we are expecting the continuous growth of this kind of PE business coming out the zombie industry or zombie portions, non-productive parts, and M&A merging with the further attractive technology or personals, something like that. So we are expecting the continuous growth on this PE strategy.
So the larger corporations in Japan kind of being open to this M&A environment.
They are forced to do that,
Yeah.
unless otherwise they cannot survive that.
Good shit. Okay, great. So I assume your comments, though, are isolated to Japan in particular, or is that broader Asia as well, or just Japan?
No, broader Asia.
Broader Asia, Japan.
Even China or any place is preferring this kind of inorganic type of growth strategy already, yes.
All right. Well, Linda, maybe I could ask you to comment. I know you're in Asia, you're around the globe, but Asia's been a really interesting market over the last several years. It really ran hot. There's certainly been a little bit of cooling, but still a very, very attractive destination. But what are your thoughts on Asia Pacific broadly, and specifically China, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunities in Asia are enormous, and China in particular. In our industries, let's look at automotive as an example. There's roughly 80 million vehicles being built and sold globally. 50% are in Asia. Less than 20% are in North America. So the market in Asia is well over double the size of North America and double the size of Europe. So it's an enormous market, and I think quite interesting and exciting. And notwithstanding the fact that Chinese economic growth has, scaled back a little bit from the double-digit range that it was, in the last 5-10 years, it's still growing at about 6%. And don't forget, it's a $13 trillion economy. I mean, that's 13 trillion times 6%. That's an enormous amount of additional economic activity. So I always have an issue with this idea of only looking at percentages without looking at absolute values. I think, each are useless without the other. I could tell you that I increased my sales 100%, but if I only sold $1 last year, big deal. You've got to look at both and think about where the economic activity is coming. So we certainly see that. We now have 7 plants in Asia. We just finished building our 4th plant in China. We've been in China for about 10 years. We've already grown China to the same size that it took Linamar, I think, 25 years to get to where we've got China in less than 10 years. So, the opportunities are significant, and I think it's really exciting. In our access market, it's a much smaller market today. Our access market is scissor lifts, boom lifts, and telehandlers that we make under the brand name Skyjack. The access market is still pretty small in China, but we think has enormous growth potential. As the market continues to mature, health and safety becomes more important from a worker perspective. Today they use a lot of bamboo scaffolding still, surprisingly, to make a lot of these buildings, but we're seeing more and more. And in fact, just in the last year or two, we're starting to see a real acceleration in terms of that market. And I have no doubt that it'll be the biggest in the world quite soon as well. So I still see it as a huge area of opportunity. At the same time, we're continuing to grow in North America and Europe as well by tapping into that growing addressable market. So I think it's important to keep, even as you're looking at new growth areas, don't forget about the bread and butter business and growing in those areas as well, because sometimes you can, look at those opportunities out there and forget about what's around the corner. So important to do both.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's come back closer to the U.S. care. You're principally U.S. based, and you brought up the R word, although I don't want you to go there. But there are some concerns about the growth potential for many segments, especially in the U.S., the potential to age out and that we could be due for a correction at some point. So what are you seeing and hearing from your customers? You actually work with some of the biggest retailers. What are you hearing from them? And are you considering going outside the U.S. to diversify a little bit?
So I think just backing up a little bit and letting everybody know a little bit about what we do and why I started the company. So I started Hint to actually have a water that I could drink without sweeteners in it. So that's really the core of Hint, and we add flavor to water, and that's it. And so our goal is really around health and helping consumers get healthier. So when I look at when I started this company 12 years ago, the Center for Disease Control said that 2% of the population had type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. Today, it's closer to 40%. And a staggering number, but not as staggering as what's going on in China. So in Beijing, for example, 50% of the population under the age of 18 now has type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. It's the fastest growing rate of type 2 diabetes in the world. So when we look at where we're going to be going with our growth outside of the U.S., we are looking at, things that are really around health and where we can be helpful. I always talk about entrepreneurs and disruption, but I think it's also really about, where can we actually create change and global change and really be helpful when a lot of our friends who are sitting in well-known, other beverage companies are still pushing the concept of sweet. So I think we need to, as a society, really look at, what impact are our consumer products actually having on not just our own industry, but also on industries like health. Yep. And that will really be pushing us outside of the U.S.
Yeah, no, well, I think that's very true. I mean, I think we're seeing that a lot. And, since you really brought up the healthcare sector, I mean, just curious, not putting anybody on the spot, but you in particular, I mean, Asia, whenever I've traveled over there, I mean, healthcare organizations, there's significant amount of opportunities in healthcare. Is that that's what you're seeing, or are there other markets that you see that those trends occurring that you would be looking at, or no?
You know, I think it's simpler than that. So I think that the challenge for consumers is that many consumers still don't know what sweeteners are doing inside of our body. So everybody, you know, most people in the world understand that sugar is not so great, but there's still a lot of information that's to be seen around what is sweeteners doing. So in the US today, you ask most people who are overweight or have conditions like type 2 diabetes, and a large percentage of those people are actually claiming to drink 0 calories or low-fat things. And so I think we as consumers really need to pay attention and not be on autopilot, just putting whatever into our body, whatever on our skin, and really pay attention to, just because the FDA has approved something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's exactly the right product for you.
Okay, well, it's coming too close to home, my sweet and low. I'm going to give it up, honestly. I really am. Stick with my hint water. Tom, let's go to the regulatory environment. So it's changing very quickly in the U.S. Obviously, there's a big expectation of a relaxed regulatory environment with the Trump administration. In Europe, you know, obviously yesterday's vote, you know, now with a hung parliament, you know, really still, I guess we're still in a little bit of an unknown situation there. At the same time, currency fluctuations are proving to be a challenge for many global businesses, ours included. So how can businesses effectively manage kind of the regulatory environment, become more resilient to the currency fluctuations? So there's a couple questions in there. So maybe first on the regulatory and then get to the currency fluctuations, which we're certainly seeing today with the pound.
So in the context of the deregulation environment that's ostensibly playing out in the United States, let me just clarify for everyone, both U.S. and non-U.S. people here. When President Trump signed the executive order saying for every one regulation that's new, you have to delete 2 regulations. In fact, that's not what the executive order said. It actually said you have to identify 2 regulations that could be deleted. So the optimism that exists about deregulation was shared by the audience with, by Mark, your CEO, on this stage yesterday. And I think the ambition is that that's going to play out. I will say it will play out over a 4-year period, not over a 90-day period, which is, I think, what everybody anticipated. In terms of the uncertainty attached to Brexit, it is a hung parliament. It's the first time in a really long time. Somebody called a snap election and didn't win. And that tells you our pollsters still don't have this right. And therefore, there's great anxiety. And I mentioned to her this morning when we were having breakfast that, so if I am representing the European Union and you're representing the UK and you're May, am I negotiating with you or who am I negotiating with and why? And I think that's going to play out as an uncertainty for the next few months. And it's going to actually perhaps have some further resolution come next Thursday during the Queen's speech on who's going to be in charge. I'm kind of eager to see that. But in the meantime, the one thing I know investors want, whether they're in business as a CEO or just plain investors in companies, is they want consistency and predictability. And at the moment, we have a world of uncertainty. And if you're in business, whether you're a small cap, large cap, or in between, I would suggest that you embrace the following rule that I learned from a marketing guy at Dell many years ago. Whenever a competitor comes out with an announcement, wait 48 hours before you do anything. So for those who actually thought that the UK would implode when the Brexit vote happened, the currency went off substantially. It actually recovered pretty much all of its weight in a relatively significant short period of time. And it was falling pretty dramatically last night in the overnight markets. I have no idea what's happened later this afternoon, but my thought is wait. Continue to operate your business as if you are not going to be affected by that, at least for the near term, and then let things play out a little bit before you see which way the winds are really going and follow that trend. Because the trend's always your friend right up until it's not.
Okay, Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to jump in a bit on this idea of uncertainty and that somehow that might be a bad thing. Because personally, I think that in times of uncertainty and in times of change and even in times of crisis is where we can find the most opportunity. I mean, certainly in times of crisis is when people are willing to do things that they would never be willing to do before. There's suddenly no sacred cows. they're willing to, in our business, outsource something that they would never outsource in the past. And they're forced to look at things a little differently. The Chinese have a saying, clear water has no fish. In other words, it is in times of uncertainty that we can find, something to feed on and something to grow our businesses. I mean, I think what it takes is for us as entrepreneurs to look at that uncertainty and find the opportunity, find what does this mean? What are people thinking about? What are they thinking differently than they thought about yesterday? And how can I turn this into an advantage for me? If somebody's uncertain, can I use that opportunity to go in and say, hey, why don't you source this program to me? Then you don't need to invest in the capital. It's time of uncertainty. It means your cost base is more variable. Let me make that investment and, take on that opportunity. And, for us, I'm talking a little bit on the auto supply side again, we have a better opportunity to reallocate capital to other customers more so than our customers can do themselves. So if they decide to tool up a new cylinder head line and the volumes aren't there, they're not going to suddenly start selling cylinder heads to Ford. But, we can do that. We can sell to more than one person. So it's less of a risk for me, and we can take advantage of the uncertainty to win that program. So, I admit uncertainty, can feel a little uncomfortable. But it also is a great time to find new business and get people to do things that they wouldn't do otherwise.
So Linda, you're a $6 billion organization, so you're not small, and I think we've always thought this entrepreneurial mindset. So you're bringing up the entrepreneurial mindset. So, so you've clearly been able to keep that in your business, right, over the last several years. So, but can you guys maybe talk about that a little bit? Our growth barometer kind of unpacked that a little, but what's different about the entrepreneurial mindset versus the larger company? Interested with you because you're not, you're not small.
I think it's such a good point, and probably something that's of interest to many of the entrepreneurs in the room, depending on where you're at in your evolution. But I think it's absolutely critical to maintain the entrepreneurial spirit in the organizations that you clearly have today, no matter how big you grow. And believe me, there's no shortage of pressure to add bureaucracy, to add layers, to add approvals, to add processes. And it's our job as leaders to fight that, to say, no, I'm not going to, put another process in place. I want to leave decision-making and accountability with the people running our businesses. So, we've and this didn't happen overnight, over probably 10 years, we've whittled down a policy and procedure manual that was like this big when I first came into sort of an executive position. To today, we have 9 procedures that each are on one single-sided piece of paper that are sort of the rules of how we want to run the business. So there's 9, we call it our global operating system, or GOS. So there's 9 GOS rules of things that we want to do the same, that we think are the really critical things to mitigate risk and ensure we have consistency of performance without dictating so much that we kill innovation and ingenuity. We want people, and accountability. So we want people coming up with ideas. We want new ways of doing things. We want to share those ideas then across the organization so we can all learn from each other. And we want our businesses, our plant managers, the folks running our groups to make their own decisions. I can't make all their decisions for them. So that's really critical. 9 single-sided pieces of paper is how we're running our business. And that naturally has to drive a huge amount of decision-making and accountability to people all over the company, and therefore helps maintain that entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay, can I have a show of hands? How many people have 9 or fewer policies in their organizations? How many have more than 9? Okay, we do at Ernst & Young. We have more than 9. So let me ask you to, that's really interesting. So Kara, you comment on this question because you are a true entrepreneur. You've been just great, fantastic, lots of entrepreneurial spirit. But how do you keep that entrepreneurial spirit? Do you kind of subscribe to this? Keep it simple?
Yeah, I think it's keep it simple, but I think it's also, great entrepreneurs at, whether it's, day 1 or year 12 are always asking the question, why what problem am I solving? And ultimately, how am I going to get there? So I think thinking outside of the box too, and innovating and trying to figure out how you're actually going to solve that problem. I mean, as a founder, that was the question that I asked in the first place. But I think as you move the business forward, you continue to keep asking those questions. You just come out with different ways to do it. So in the case of, the beverage industry, a few years ago, we took our business, which was my background at AOL, to e-commerce. And many beverage companies and food companies that I'm friendly with said, no consumer is actually going to buy beverages online. They're not going to go online and order heavy cases of Hint online. And that business today is almost 40% of our overall business.
Okay.
So in addition to working with stores, some of the stores that you mentioned, we also really, really believe that the consumer is really our focus in actually driving our destiny. And if we can get as close to that consumer as possible, really with the direct-to-consumer model, we believe that the consumer will help us actually achieve our overall goals.
Yeah, well, I guess it's what Mark Cuban was saying to us yesterday. So Tom, I'm going to go to you. Same question, kind of thinking about this entrepreneurial spirit. And then I also want to ask the Mark Cuban question. Do you think you have to be nice? You were in the session. I won't ask Linda that question because I don't think she saw it.
Entrepreneurship in large companies is really hard. And I applaud Linda and her success and her company success. And it's really impressive for those of you who have not been in big companies to have double-digit growth for 6 consecutive years in a company the size that she's shepherding. In that vein, I think that what happens is, as companies grow, is they essentially have arterial clogging because they start to look for procedures. They want to be, you hire really smart people ask really smart questions, and they layer in more activity that's in some respects unnecessary. And I'll use the company without naming the company, but I was in a company where we had a dashboard that was presented by me to the CEO and 2 other people every Friday. We talked about it no matter where we were in the world. I left, and 2.5 years later, that dashboard, which was 4 pages, was 65 pages. And I thought, well, that's really weird. How'd that happen? Because those 3 men had no opportunity to read 65 pages every Friday and talk about intelligence. Just didn't. I would share with you, I think that happens oftentimes. What's different between the large and the small company entrepreneur, in my opinion, is not much, because whether you're large or small, company-based, you are fundamentally a risk taker. So when crises occur, uncertainty exists, as Linda said, opportunities just present themselves. I did not know that saying about the clear water with no fish, but what I can tell you is those are the moments of impact, and those are real differentiators. And oftentimes, for example, a large corporate executive will turn around and say, cut everything 10%. And that's every group, except every group may have differing skill sets, different capabilities. And in fact, the last thing a company large should be doing is cutting sales, especially as you go into a slower growth period or more uncertain period where you have to really sell. And remember, selling starts with the word no. Otherwise, everything's order taking. So my sense is that we have an obligation to constantly remind ourselves when things are going really well, that Disney and The Lion King had it right. It's the circle of life. What's going really well won't be going really well at some point, and how are we preparing ourselves for that moment? And in fact, at one point in my life with Michael Dell, walking through the Heathrow Airport, we were told we had some real issues, and I told him, well, this is great. And he looked at me, he stopped dead in his tracks and said, well, you have a perfectly weird sense of humor. Why do you think that's great? I said, well, frankly, we're scaling so fast. If this didn't happen for 3 or 4 more years, as I thought it might not, we'd be that much bigger, it'd be that much harder. And we went through that crisis, and we came out smiling. And a few years later, things were going great. I said, you know, we need to create another crisis. And the crisis can be a crisis of not business, but how do we reflect on starting with a clean sheet of paper and realize, geez, direct is best, but all of a sudden there's an internet that's real, and there's a browser that changed what a computer was to what it has become. And it changed a lot of people's lives.
Well, it sounds like that phenomenon played out for you.
Yeah,
right? So that's what Kara was saying. So, no, that's great. Saito-san, coming back to you. So let's just get this out on the table. So organic versus inorganic, you talked about a lot of the M&A activity in Japan in particular, but, prices and valuations are pretty frothy. So we had a pretty good dialogue on this morning at breakfast, so let's see if we can get this going again. PE firms are still doing deals, lots of capital to deploy. People are going to chase growth. They're going to do it, organically or inorganically. So, what are you thinking about the high valuation environment that we find ourselves in? And do you think it's going to continue? And how are you contending with that? And I'm going to ask everybody if you have a point of view on this. I'm sure, Linda, you do, and Tom. So, but Saito-san, please, from your standpoint first, in the PE world, and you're competing with some of the corporate buyers, what do you think about this?
Well, the market has soared up, so in general, the price of the stocks on the world are quite expensive today. Although I should say that Japan is about 15-20% less than that of the Europe and the United States in value. But anyhow.
All right, Japan's on sale. Did you hear that?
But I think, as you know, the purpose of the M&A is not necessarily only the merge with the same industry. That's rather we are intentionally looking for the some merge with the different industry.
Yep.
With the kind of analysis of cognate the science, I dare to say the kind of explorations, far-reaching exploration to the for knowledge is source of the venture business, I think. So that with this kind of different style of the M&A, you should adapt the talent or technologies or clients, for the future growth.
Yep.
So I think, of course, we have to discount the price in the level of the price of the stocks of the counterpart. But at the same time, we should pay more attention the strategy of the growth strategy for the future of the company.
Yep.
For example, when we carve out the healthcare industry from Panasonic's Japanese Panasonic electric industry,
yep.
we bought it back and we merged this portion with the German pharmaceutical company, and this is a totally different areas, and we enhanced the EV as high as about 3 to 5 times in just 2 years.
Yep.
So we made up a totally complete different company, and so by this way we are positively using this M&A strategy to change the growth model of the company.
Yep. So do a carve out and then combine it with some other companies.
Right.
All right. Tom or Linda, Kara, any other thoughts on organic, inorganic, and?
Yeah, I mean, we've grown through a combination of organic and inorganic. I'd say about a third of our plants globally, might be 40% now, were acquired. So we're growing more organically than inorganically. I like organic growth because I feel like we can really control the culture to work the way that we like to work. It's very difficult to change the culture of a company when it's already well set. It's not impossible. We've done it. We've tried to, when we did make acquisitions, find companies that were sort of like-minded in terms of being sort of entrepreneurial, in terms of really valuing innovation and technology. And really that's been the strategy behind our acquisition strategy is interesting technologies. So your acquisitions sort of buy you time, right? They buy you the time that you would otherwise spend developing that technology yourself, or developing, in that region yourself, or developing that new customer yourself. So, you know, they buy you time, but there's a price to pay for it, right? So, you know, you have to balance those needs. But, you know, the most successful acquisitions we've done for sure have been great technologies that we felt gave us an edge, whether it be in terms of product design, process design, material development, or bringing us into whole new markets, like our Skyjack business, a good example. That we bought Skyjack 15 years ago. When we bought them, they were a little less than 200 million in sales. This year, they should be over $1 billion. So they've really grown. Great company, great technology. Again, it comes back to those fundamentals. And it's interesting because we were just looking at a bit of a review of some of our acquisition history. And, you know, you have this basic principle of, you know, buy low, sell high, which, you know, obviously if you're a buyer and a seller, you're at opposite ends of that spectrum. You always want to buy low, and then the other guys always want to sell when things are high. But what our analysis showed us is the ones that we bought that were, you know, not performing well really took a long time to start to perform well. Whereas the ones that were strong performers, that admittedly we paid a little more for, to your point around multiples,
Yep.
actually have performed fantastic. I mean, Montepay is probably a good example of that. I mean, we paid almost 8 times EBITDA, but this is a company that's generating, you know, 20% EBITDA margins or higher, fantastic technology, global leader in cylinder head casting, and have allowed us to really accelerate our cylinder head business and also expand into some new areas of the vehicle that we weren't in before. So, you know, it's paying back very, very quickly. So, you know, we've found it to be a successful strategy.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you got a great deal, or at least I guess that was a year or so ago. So now I think we're at about 11 times. I mean, if we tracked all the multiples, it's about 11 times. So 8 times is great. So we are in this buy high and then I guess sell high. So, but Tom, any comments before I want to come back to Kara because she's grown all organically?
I would say that I think one of the mistakes entrepreneurs make in large and small companies is they veer too frequently from their core. And there's a triad of books, Profit from the Core, Beyond the Core, and Unstoppable, and written by a friend of mine named Chris Zook, who studied 8,000 companies using Bain data. And what happens for those companies that actually stay true to their core until they've tapped the core, they do exceedingly well in adding growth both organically and inorganically, but it has to be part of the core. Too often, and the corporate board wrote up a big study on this years ago, a lot of companies who veer out of the core accelerate into the abyss, and that's not necessarily good. My take is that you only move outside to adjacencies that are close. So I'll give you an example. In a company that my partner Andrew Weinberg and I were working with was a company called Brightstar Corp. They were involved in distribution of mobility devices, and we concluded that, geez, you know, we could be leveraging our access to phones, some of which had literally been opened once, not used, and returned, and doing an insurance product. So we actually bought an insurance company. We weren't in the insurance business, but the insurance company needed what we had, which was part of our core business. And it went from about an $8 or so million EBITDA to 80. And part of the reason why Masayoshi eventually bought the company Brightstar Corp.
Can I just quickly weigh in on the idea, of core, non-core? I think that you should, that's probably good advice. I mean, you don't want to do something you have absolutely no idea how to do. But also, you also don't have to define your core too narrowly. You know, like we've expanded our business in terms of process, in terms of markets, but there's an element of consistency, that being it's all manufacturing and it all has some metallic base. So when we expanded into Skyjack 15 years ago, I mean, we were an automotive supplier. We didn't know anything about the access market, but we knew a lot about manufacturing, lean purchasing. We had an enormous amount of capability we could bring to the table to really streamline operations and improve efficiencies. We had globalized our company already. We could help them do that as well. So even though people wouldn't call it core because it wasn't automotive, we found ways to take strengths that we had and take them into a new area by defining a little more broadly what core is. And I think that's important to do because it's good to have growth in more than one channel. I mean, we didn't like the idea of having all our eggs in one basket. We wanted to have more than one opportunity within which to grow. So we have a great and growing business in automotive, but now we also have a great and growing business in access. And, we have a commercial vehicle business and an off-highway vehicle business, and, we've started investing in food and agriculture equipment. Again, all manufacturing, all like some element of metallic processing. But, you can define your core a little bit more broadly and to give yourself the opportunity to diversify in a way that allows you still to grow.
So,
Okay.
could
Sorry,
I add,
Tom's like itching to way back.
I actually think that in that context, you're not an automotive company 10 or 15 years ago. You were in manufacturing. Your superpower was manufacturing.
Yeah.
Just as Amazon's and Jeff Bezos isn't about book distribution, it's about being a great distributor and logistics provider.
Yeah.
His core is whatever it wants, as long as
Yeah.
it relates to distribution and logistics and compressing time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me come back to Kara then. Or-
Okay. Well, I
please.
would just add on to that we recently launched sunscreen, and a lot of people said, okay, what are you doing? You've gone from beverages to sunscreen. But it really goes back to we saw a need for our consumer, and we really believed that we would be the best people to go and solve that problem, because in the sun care industry, no one was paying attention to an ingredient that we saw in sunscreen, which is oxybenzone, which is a chemical that is used for sunscreen, but it is also one that is questionable as it relates to skin cancer growth. And so we decided to take our fruit extracts from our water, and actually that is the tie-in, but we're solving a problem for our consumers. And I'll just say this, that because we actually had the relationship with the customer to go back and sell them the product in our online business, it was, when we sent it out in January, the announcement that we were launching sunscreens, over 50% of our consumers then actually bought a bottle of sunscreen from us in January. So that really shows, I think, number one, that we've built a brand. Number two, that we're actually helping consumers solve the problem. And we really shift the focus of, are we a beverage company, which is competing against the big guys, to we're problem solvers for the consumers around health.
So was it also, health. So, that was really, so you're a manufacturer, you're really focused around health. So is that how you guys, do you think about that, Linda, when you're thinking about your product diversification or where you're moving?
We do articulate ourselves as a diversified manufacturing company, not an automotive company, to your point, because we're trying to get, frankly, our investor base to think about us as from a little bit broader perspective, mostly because I'm really tired of them asking me when I'm going to sell Skyjack, when it's, creating enormous earnings and cash flow and is a great growth engine. So I think, how you articulate who you are, helps broaden that umbrella for sure.
Okay, great. Sato-san, can I come to you on governance? So you've actually, really been an advocate for good governance practices in Japan over the last couple of years. You've really pushed hard for a lot more governance for not only the individual companies, but for the economy as a whole. So I'm just interested in what types of things you think entrepreneurs should be thinking around governance, and why you think that's such, so important to the growth agenda.
Okay,
It's a little contrary to what people may think, so I'm just curious as to your reaction.
as I told you, Japan has been suffering a long time the low growth of the GDP in the advanced state for past 20 years, and no growth, and we lost the international competitiveness. Even we were enjoying the quite nice level of the technology, but the corporations were not so much concerned about the profitability per capita basis or so, and that was killing the wealth of the state, the nation. So we wonder how we regained past power on Japan. Then we talked with the executives, managers of the corporations, but they were just satisfied with the current, the very small level of the profitability, and they are facing the labor market problem. We have a very strict lifetime employment systems also.
Yep.
They are not, they don't have a free hand to, the cut off the labors of the overproduction, whatever it is. So I decided to introduce the, to use the shareholders' power to put the pressure to the managers. And we introduced the corporate governance code as a rule on the stock exchange or the listed company particularly. And also our Japanese FSA decided to introduce the stewardship code for the asset managers. And asset managers were mandatorily asked to put the pressure to the corporate managers of the corporation listed company about the profitability or profit margin. So by this way, we try to revitalize Japan itself.
Yep.
With the power of shareholders.
Yep.
So we are expecting the responsibility for the manager's responsibility for profitability or responsibility for the shareholders. By this way, we are now trying to regain the total Japan powers. That is a reason why we are very grapple with this problem seriously. That we are expecting the quite steady democratic private-based recovery rather than the direct intervention by the government. So I hope it worked well. That already we see the very nice reaction on the market.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Well, listen, I'm going to go out to do Q&A here in just a minute, but Tom, maybe I could ask you just quickly here. So think about your questions. You had talked about, growth, liquidity, and profitability. And at times throughout all the companies you've worked with, you can sometimes chase too much growth and suffer profitability or not be worried about liquidity challenges. So if you wouldn't mind, share your 2 cents on that, because I thought it was instructive. And certainly sometimes you can chase growth for growth's sake, but maybe not the best.
So I do a lot of venture investing and also private equity, and oftentimes what I have witnessed and experienced either vicariously or directly is the entrepreneurial team, especially the CEO, is driven off of usually growth, because the highest multiple is going to be paid off of growth. And not necessarily profitable growth. So it could be eyeballs at one point, it could be clicks, it could be page views. And that's all about growth. And if they stay too long on that focus and lose sight of the fact that it really requires cash to run a business, and you can only run ahead of your cash intake for so long before you run out of cash. And it's like a family budget. And what I'm fond of telling entrepreneurs is, look, think of it as a triangle. You got liquidity. I'm a big follow the money guy. Growth, profitability. And what you really want is to be balanced across that sweep of those 3 points or access points.
Yep.
And at any one point, you want to emphasize one or the other depending upon where you are. And in the startup years, clearly you want to go for the growth because you want to penetrate. You want to be the first mover. But here's a clue. I'm also a quant. If you're a first mover, only 8% of the time in the United States have you won. Let me think about MySpace, Facebook, Yahoo, Google. I could go on and on. 8%, 43% of the time, if you're a second or third mover, you won. So it's not about being a first mover. It could be, but you have less than a 10% chance.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. All right, listen, as promised, we're going to go out to the audience. So if we can turn up the lights, and if people have questions for our panelists, greatly appreciate it. So, I see one in the back. James?
So as you scale, you often need people that have been with larger companies. What's your go-to question to figure out whether this person's going to adopt an entrepreneurial mindset and they're able to scale?
Is that for anybody?
I'll take that.
Okay.
So I think that's been the biggest learning experience for us in growing our company. We initially thought I didn't have beverage experience when I launched this company. I had a tech background, and I thought I'm going to get lots of people from, you know, Coke and Pepsi to come and work. And what I quickly realized is that above and beyond the cultural differences of sort of growing a company and a brand from the ground up, in the beverage industry, there's a large network of trucks that exist in these large companies. And so you hire people that have done a great job that have done a great job within these large, you know, 500 companies, and they don't necessarily be scrappy enough to actually build something, right? And so they're really, really challenged with how do I actually, you know, go to Kroger or Publix or whatever and actually meet with the buyer. Instead, they're dependent on buying the space.
Okay, Linda?
Yeah, I'll just 100% agree with Kara, because as we have grown, we have on occasion looked outside to folks for senior positions. And in fact, it has never worked, because we found that these people we brought in from the outside were too rooted in these bureaucratic, you know, organizations. They didn't know how to work fast. They thought they knew, but they had no idea until they got into our environment, which is works very quickly and is totally about change. We change every day, and people just weren't comfortable with that, and they weren't comfortable with the entrepreneurial accountability of, you know, owning that decision. And you know, we have found that promotion from within is 100% the best way for us. And I think maybe it's because the culture that we have is different than other companies, you know, of our size. And people who don't have that natural sort of entrepreneurial instinct and ability to be very responsive and move very quickly and seize opportunity and look at top line and bottom line, I totally agree. Those are not mutually exclusive, that you can, you know, grow profitably. I mean, we've had 6 years of double-digit top line growth. We've also had 6 years of double-digit bottom line growth. So, you know, being able to marry that together, sometimes you have to grow that. And so we spend an enormous amount of time and money developing people from within, and bring people in maybe at lower levels or kind of mid levels, and then, you know, try and school them in the culture of who we are as a company to help them be successful at the senior level.
I would just add, smarts and passion definitely trumps experience in an entrepreneurial environment.
Okay, great. Other questions? Oh, Mark?
Here we go. I'll direct this at Tom and Linda. How do you deal with and grow a multinational company with all the geopolitical risk we're seeing today and what it brings, impacting currency risk, employment risk, regulatory risk, and the like, and still actually have tremendous growth?
Hire E&Y. No.
I knew I liked that guy.
And that may be an outcome. But I think more seriously, you have to be very prudent in terms of how fast you're going to expand globally, and then you have to choose which markets. And there's always a healthy debate as to, geez, we found somebody in Tokyo, he'd be great, let's expand, or she'd be great in Japan. But really the better place to go initially for what it is our widget is could be Brazil or the UK or France. And you have to really understand a lot of variables, including not just where I can find the talent, but where I can put the talent. And back to the earlier question, if I had one thing and only one thing I wanted to understand about the entrepreneur, is do they believe? Do they have that passion?
Okay.
Herb, can I ask a question?
Mark, absolutely.
Thank you, Herb. Herb, we go back years. I have to say you're doing a spectacular job on that panel.
We do go back quite a year.
Here's my question to your fabulous group over here. We've had a lot of interest over the last couple of days, as you know, on the subject of talent, of your team. and specifically attracting really good, smart people into your organization. Could you, as a group, share with us any of your recruitment secrets? Things that have worked well for you, maybe methods you use to attract the right people into your organization.
So I'll take this. So I think having a purpose in your company from day one is really, really important, especially
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So, and I mean that sincerely. That I think it really the number of people who join the company because they understand my backstory of why I actually did it, and they get it. Although they may not have had the same health issues, they recognize that there's problems with consumer products that are healthy perception versus healthy reality. So I think they want to go and work for a company that has that purpose, that really they feel like they can create some kind of impact in order to make that change. And I think it's really something that is even bigger than a badge. It's really like, this is what I'm going to go and do with this company, and I can actually create some kind of impact.
And that's something that truly drives the millennial group, the feeling that they're in some way giving back, helping the world.
Absolutely. Other thoughts on?
Yeah, I'll throw in a couple of thoughts. Number one, and it's what our panel is talking about, is demonstrated growth. I mean, people want to come to a company that's growing, because if a company is growing, it means there will be opportunities, right? So, you know, that I think that's important, to have that demonstrated growth, that people want to be part of something that's going somewhere. And I think, importantly, having an environment where there is, you know, respect and opportunity for everybody, a true meritocracy. I know it's easy to say that, but you need to demonstrate that anybody can get anywhere in the company. And we have lots of examples of people running plants, running groups, running multi-billion-dollar groups that started out on the shop floor. So just smart, to your point, smart, passionate, capable people that we took and trained and developed and, you know, helped them to grow in the company. We've got lots of examples of that. So, you know, somebody can look.
Sorry, it's me. Do you share those stories with the wider workforce so they see what the potential is?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we talk about the fact, I mean, having an environment of opportunity and respect is one of our core values. It's one of the things we articulate. It's one of the things we measure people on in their performance reviews every year. It's an element in, you know, promotion and succession as to whether you demonstrate that or not. So it's easy to put words up on a wall, but you have to have the real examples of, you know, it really working that way in your company. And I think when people see that, they can rally around it. And I mean, I think it's important also to obviously to have, you know, great purpose. And you know, it might be harder to rally people around a camshaft, but I think we try and do that, you know. And I think there's a way that you can do it, because, I mean, we talk about, you know, a big priority of ours, obviously, in terms of product design and process design, is how can we improve fuel economy, reduce emissions, what can we do? You know, we've designed a camshaft that's 60% lighter than traditional cams, a dramatic improvement in fuel efficiency, dramatic reduction in emissions. So, you know, you can love a camshaft.
All right, with that, I will just share, Mark, building a better working world is obviously EY's purpose, and we actually celebrate that around the globe, and we have nominations, and we tell lots of stories like that, and Mark tells many from the stage, but it actually has come to life for us as well, and I truly believe in that. So thank you. With that, we're out of time. I want to ask everyone to give a big round of applause to our panel. And we'll move on. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Herb. That was marvelous. So as the panel exit the stage, we're going to do a little bit of stagecraft here. We're going to move some chairs off, and we're going to make the stage ready for our two fantastic speakers who are coming up next. And you know exactly who's coming up. So while we reset the stage, I'm going to just share with you a couple of ideas and a couple of other insights that will help you in the way that you communicate and how you present out there to the wider world. So one of them is when you stand up, or indeed you're in front of some investors and you decide to deliver a slide deck. How do you deliver your slides? Because everyone does it differently, but I'm going to share with you one secret, a secret from the stage. The majority of people, when it comes to doing a slide deck, do the following. They go, well, this is a picture of my factory, and this is what we do, and slide change. They look around, and they look surprised. They go, oh yeah, this. Do not ever be surprised by your own slide deck. To really be a spectacular presenter with a deck, you have to know what's coming next. Why? Because you can use the perfect transition to go from slide A to slide B. And the perfect transition, ladies and gentlemen, is simply a rhetorical question. That's all you need to remember. If you deliver a rhetorical question to trigger the next slide, it sounds like this wonderful, seamless presentation. The only problem is you need to know what's coming next. So if your next picture is, for example, to say, so what really drives people's demand around what we sell? Well, change slide, it's a fruit tree. You don't even look. It looks continuous. It makes for a much more professional presentation. So the trick is rhetorical question and know your slide order. That is beyond the most important thing. One other thing. In life, we've got to be storytellers. Everything that really comes to life is when it's coined within a story. Far too many people in the executive space go in with facts and figures and stats and charts. Nobody goes home after hearing you present and says to other people, I saw the best pie chart I've ever seen. Nobody does that. But if you tell a story, guess what happens? A story is easily remembered. And if a story is easily remembered, it can be easily retold. And if people retell your story, then you go viral. And so what you have to tell all your teams back at base is simply this. You've got to stop concentrating on the facts and the figures and the stats and find ways to tell a story. And what I'm going to do with you right now, because, and you can tell I'm filling, because our next guest is still on his way in. What I'm going to do now is just give you very briefly the perfect recipe for what should be in your stories. Hollywood calls it the setup, the build, and the payoff. You've got to stage what the problem is. You've got to go through how you solve that problem, and then most importantly, what the result of you having solved the problem is. That is a story. And as soon as people hear a story begin, guess what they as humans need? They need to hear it end. So you have to, within your own organizations, find the stories, find the wins, and then you capture people's attention. Now, I'm looking in the back of the room. Do we have our guests ready? Yes or no? It's a thumbs up. That's wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, we have right now, in succession, 2 spectacular guests for our event. And they're both going to tell their stories. But to introduce our first one, we're going to welcome back to the stage. Hold on a second. Why are you now saying no? So you said yes, and now you're saying no. 4 minutes. Are you serious? I love communication like that. Okay, you know what? This is a treat. I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you a story. And I'm telling you the story because it's the perfect illustration of how you should structure yours, but it's a good one. We have a little dog at home. Her name is Hope. She's a black lab. That is not the story. The problem was I love dogs, and in our family, I always had dogs. I grew up with dogs, and I wanted one. My wife and I negotiated for a while, and we decided, okay, we'll get a dog. But given that I travel all the time, and given that my wife did not really express much of an interest in training the dog, we needed an option. We needed a solution. So we did some research, and we found this incredible program where dogs are trained to be either seeing eye dogs, or bomb-sniffing dogs, or dogs that assist in police departments. And in every group of dogs, there's always a couple that flunk out. You know what they call these dogs? They call them flunkies. Now, the flunkies are not just gorgeous, but they're incredibly well trained. It was a cost, a $5,000 cost. That's your contribution to this charity, but that was fine. We put our name down and we waited. Now, here's the twist. And by the way, every story you ever tell should have a twist. The twist is this. Where are the dogs trained? They're not in a dog training facility. They're trained in a prison. In an actual jail. In the United States, there's a program called Puppies Behind Bars. I'd never heard of it, but it's real. And what they do is they take prisoners who are low risk and they give them a puppy. This is an 8-week-old puppy, and they go, this is now your dog. And for 2 whole years, inside the prison in a special wing, they train these dogs, but to the most incredible, impeccable levels. They train them to react to if a soldier has come back from a war, and they have post-traumatic stress, and they're having some form of attack during the night. The dog is trained to go up, pick the blanket up with their mouths, drag the blanket off them, and then go turn the light on with their paw. I swear, I'm not even making this up. Phenomenal. So the phone rings. About 6 months we've been on the waiting list. And the gentleman says to me, Mark, are you still in the market for a dog? I said, yes. He says, we have 2 for you. Let me tell you about them. Bear in mind, at this point, my wife is pregnant. Dog 1, he says, hates children. Is that going to be a problem? Yes, we're having a baby. What about dog 2? Dog 2, he says, beautiful dog, female dog called Hope, but she has terrible allergies. She's always sneezing, she's always itching her paws, she takes a ton of antihistamine drugs, it's going to cost you a lot of money in vet fees. Are you interested? And I said, yes. All you have to do, the guy said to me, is come along to the facility, pick up the dog, and then try her out, and if you like her, you can keep her. So we drive to Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. This is a women-only jail. It is a prison. We arrive. There's barbed wire, razor wire everywhere. We go in, and the guards take all our electronics off us. This is absolutely what happened. We then move through into Section B, where we have to wait. Then there's a loud buzz, and a door opens, and they say to us, only one of you can go and collect the dog. So I go. And I'm standing there waiting, and then I see this beautiful black Labrador coming down the corridor, and holding her leash is a female prisoner dressed in, anyone guess the color? Of course, orange. And she comes up to me, and this is where it gets a little crazy. She hands me a little bag. She goes, these are her treats. And she hands me this thick journal, and she says, this is the story of this dog I brought up since day 1. This is everything she does and everything she is. And then she starts crying. I swear, and I'm crying as well because I'm so emotional. I said, I promise you I will look after this dog. I see your signal. I've got to end the story. I've started, so I must finish. She's going, finish. We take the dog home. The dog is a joy. Last bit of the story. Here's the payoff. I did some research. Her name was Annette, the lady that trained the dog. I did some research, what she did, why she was in jail. It turned out she killed her husband. But apart from that, she was great. And she brought up a wonderful dog, and Hope is our dog. End of story. Find the stories, ladies and gentlemen. And you too. Thank you very much. I love you. With no further ado, and to introduce our first amazing guest, please welcome back to the stage, Chairman and CEO of EY, Mark Weinberger. Thank you. I'm sorry.
All right. What an event. This is pretty amazing. All right. You can't compete with the dog story, so I'm just going to get right into it. We are incredibly excited. We're coming to the crescendo here. We got our last 2 30-minute interviews, 2 tremendous people. I know you're going to love it. So first, I'm going to be joined up here in a moment by Vishal Sikka, who's the CEO of Infosys. Vishal is an amazing guy. He's the first CEO of Infosys who wasn't the founder in 33-year history. So that was a lot of pressure to be put on him from the start. But not only that, when he took over the company, morale was low. It wasn't deemed as very innovative. It had a number of problems in the market. Employee attrition was high, and there was no real way forward. And Vishal said, well, what do we need to do? And I think it's just incredible. He created this zero-distance strategy. He championed innovation. We'll talk about that when he gets up here. He is someone who we celebrated in Davos, Switzerland. Him and I had a conversation in front of hundreds of people talking about purpose and what he was able to do there. And we're so proud to be able to have him here. I'm going to invite him out in a second, but before I do, I'd like to have you look at this short video.
Over after
Please welcome Vishal Sikka. All right, all right, Vishal.
Great to be here, Mark.
It's great to, now, Vishal, you don't know this, but Mark was terrific. He was going to ask those questions and tell dog stories anyway, but Vishal's plane was 45 minutes late, and he literally walked in 1 minute before I came on the stage, and so he just got here. So big round of applause to Vishal.
Thank you very much.
So
I have to say it's an amazing event, and the location can't be better.
Yeah, well, that helps. That helps, no doubt about it. And I'm glad you're not going to be able to spend that much with us. I know you'll be here for a little bit tonight, and then you have to head out again. Just like Mark Cuban really demonstrates his commitment to you, and just coming here to be with you and to share some thoughts, and hopefully get to meet some of you afterwards. So, really appreciate it, Vishal. All right, you make it look easy in the video, and we'll get to that in a second. You know, we talk a lot about this. We talked about it in Davos. Business has a place to play, a place to serve the greater good in this environment today where there's more income inequality, more division, more difficulties, and fragmentation than any of us can remember in a long time.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's Infosys' role? What do you think about when you're devising your strategy and working with your couple 100,000 employees? How do you talk about your role in the world?
No, you know, Mark, you have always talked about purpose and purpose-driven strategy, purpose-driven business. The more we look at the world around us, I mean, there is that, like you said, the sense of tremendous inequality and fragmentation. There is also on my flight over, I was reading this report that just came out by two professors from MIT and on the role of a first quantitative study of the impact of robotics on jobs, on manufacturing jobs. And when you look at what's going on in the workforce and this deep sense of anxiety around what the transformation around us is all about, the political environment, you feel that businesses today are the organizations that have that ability to effect the change around us, to be about more than just to the delivering the top line and the bottom line, but about participating in and contributing to the ecosystems around us. When I look at Infosys, there is one greater role that we play in the society around us, which is we are a software company. You know, at a time when the world is being transformed by software, out of my 200,000 employees, I have about 150,000 can write software. And we see that is a tremendous opportunity to impact the world around us for the better. But then when you think about the economic situation, I mean, if you look at the situation in India, it is the same situation. A bulk of our employees are in India. And you have kids coming out of colleges. There is a tremendous unemployment even in engineering graduates in India. So I mean, and here is the CEO, you know, and with this audacious goal of taking an engineer who walks in from a college into Infosys and turning them into an innovator. And the thing about it is that I don't see any other way. I don't see in the times that are ahead of us, the times of AI, the times of automation, I don't see any other way than for all of us to be entrepreneurs. And so when your team told me about this event, Valerie told me about it, I felt that this was one that you have to go to because it celebrates entrepreneurship. And I think that that sense of purpose, that sense of passion, that sense of being about something bigger than just the business that we are in is really what is necessary for the times ahead of us.
That's wonderful to hear from a CEO, but of course, what you've been able to do, and it's great to have a purpose, but you've got to make it part of your culture. You've got to drive it through the organization. Your couple 100,000 people who are software engineers and elsewhere, they've got to understand what that means. How do you bring it through the organization?
So that is very interesting. It was almost exactly 3 years ago. I was sitting in Delhi with Mr. Murthy, who was at the time the chairman, and Mr. Kamath and a few other people. And there was a team there, and I asked the team, it became very clear within the first 2 days that the main unit of work in Infosys is a project. At the end of the day, somewhere you are working on a project. So I asked the team, how many projects do we have? And one guy said 60,000, and another guy said, no, it must be closer to 30,000. And I thought, wow, there is something very seriously wrong that these guys don't know. And Mr. Murthy walked into the room and he said, Vishal, in my time, this would not have happened. The correct number must be closer to 25,000. And sure enough, he was right. The number was 23,500. So there are 23,500 projects, more or less, in the company. And around 10,000 of those are what we call master projects. So even though it is 200,000 people, which is a massive number, you really have 10,000 units of work. So the idea was that could you inspire, and each one of those has a project manager, and this is usually, I mean, you saw two of them. Usually this is a 31, 32-year-old kid, and with a tremendous amount of energy and passion. So the idea was to turn them into entrepreneurs, turn them into, so we figured out ways of reaching out to them and creating a very tangible set of actions. We call this zero distance. And the idea of zero distance is a very entrepreneurial one. It is that you have to be, entrepreneurs are always in contact with the world outside. They are in zero distance with the world outside. They are in touch with end users. They are in touch with what it takes to make something happen, the engineering, the architecture, writing the software, making the thing, whatever. And the selling, the value creation, the viability. So these three dimensions they're always in touch with. And so the idea was to create a culture where everybody else leaves the project managers alone, lets them innovate, lets them come up with ideas that they can bring to their projects. And I have talked to your team, who works with us about the same idea. They love this principle. Of course, that means that it becomes a little bit annoying because they are constantly trying to sell you more stuff.
Not our team, we wouldn't do that.
So that was the idea, was to break it down into something very actionable, very tangible that you can relate to, but you can relate to at a level of 10,000 projects. And it's really quite remarkable how it has picked up.
But so when you have, it bridges into innovation. You're talking about, creating a purpose. You want your team to be more innovative. Of course, your people have to be. That's your lifeblood there.
Yeah.
But if you have innovation without focus, it's like heresy.
Yeah.
You've got to have innovation moving in the right direction. How do you cage it and get it going in the right direction?
That is a very so what happened with zero distance was within 9 months it became kind of a viral movement, and everybody started coming up with ideas. And as we looked at the ideas, to your question, it became very clear that the ideas were not that great. The awesome thing was that we had thousands of ideas and people were implementing these. And one other thing that happened in our company was in services companies, you have this concept of a bench. And at Infosys, the shocking thing was that when I started, we had a bench of close to 9,000 people. Even at 81% utilization, which is very high by our standards, by the industry standards, you have like 8,000, 9,000 people sitting on the bench. And when I was at SAP, the entire application development team that I had was like 9,000 people. So, and there was a separate technology team. So I was thinking that, there has to be some way to, utilize this. And so we created a marketplace to get the bench to become more productive. And those guys on the bench started to implement the ideas that the projects would come up with. So how do you focus the innovation? So when we saw that, and I mentioned this quote by Martin Luther King, that if you cannot fly, you must run. If you cannot run, you must walk. If you cannot walk, you crawl, but you keep moving forward. So you get people to go to that next level. If they have been crawling, you get them to walk. If they've been walking, you get them to run and so on. And it is very interesting. On my flight over here from San Francisco, I was reading, every month I get a new update on the zero distance project ideas. And this time around, I had a very interesting report. We have some of our, equivalent of your entrepreneurs of the different regions. I have about 350 project managers who are like the very best in the company. So I look into what projects have they been involved in. And I found this one project that we work on with a very distinguished client of ours, an insurance company. And it's a mutual client of ours. There were 6 of these 350 superstars in that one big program. And I was like, wow, 6 of them are working on this one. What have they done? And it was amazing. I found that they worked on the particular claims processing system, and they found that the pharmacy data that comes in to the claims, there are 15,000 errors per year that they would run into, and there was a manual process to deal with these errors. And they wrote some kind of a system to, before the order comes in, check it out, and they achieved 100% elimination of the errors, completely automated it. And they automated it in a way that was totally non-disruptive. So for the rest of the process, it is completely invisible that the data coming in was earlier wrong, and they have just fixed it before it ever gets there. I thought it was such an amazing example. I haven't talked to those guys yet because I just read this literally 24 hours ago, or not even 24 hours ago. I'm going to write to those 6 kids. I mean, this is the kind of thing that they do, you know. Nobody asked them to. There wasn't an organizational mandate that some order that came down from the top that, hey, you must eliminate this error rate. They thought of this on their own. And there are thousands of examples like this, and I think that is amazing.
So, I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here who think about these new and different things, but for you in a large company like us, I mean, you get these ideas, the flowers are blooming everywhere. How do you capture it, commercialize it, monetize it? How does it get to the top? How does it become useful? How do you fail quickly in a big organization? All the tough things that as these businesses start to scale up, they're going to have to think about.
Yeah, the good news, it's bad. There's bad news and good news. The bad news is that it is very difficult. It is very, very hard. So, you know, so you enjoy the fact that there are thousands of little flowers, but you have to figure out a way to make this turn into something much bigger. And that is very, very tough. And that requires organizational change, organizational discipline. I have been really harsh on some of our senior managers to figure out a way to capture this value, to make sure that they make this pay. Because the kids don't know the value of it. They did this amazing thing. It is up to somebody in the organization who understands the business impact of this. I had one of these zero-distance ideas was at a pharmaceutical company. And this guy was very proud of the work they did. They figured out a way to lower there are these terminally ill patients who want to try out different drugs which are in experimental stages. And they figured out a way to lower the amount of time it takes to match the people with the experimental medicine. And they brought this down from 3 weeks to 1 week or something like that. And when somebody asked them, what is the value of this? They said it is $320,000. We were like, how did you calculate that? They said, because it is 14 days multiplied by the salary of the people who used to work that thing. I said, no, you have given a terminally ill patient 2 more weeks to try something. What is the value of that, you know? So there have to be people who are like the value capturers who are constantly into these things. And you know what? Then you realize the need for passion. You have to find the people who are passionate about that. Look, I have a team that has found a way to save 2 weeks from the probably last few months or weeks of a terminally ill patient's life. I am going to go make something happen with this. And that, you know, Warren Buffett used to say that the number one sign of success in anything is, did the person have passion? And you have to find people who have that passion. The processes can follow the rules, the KPIs, the incentives, all that stuff can follow, but you have to have a leader who has that passion to make something happen with an idea, to convince people that, look, there is something beyond this hill and we have to go there. Finding that passion is extremely important.
Well, it is. And as you think about that passion, though, and you turn it into operation, it does obviously get more difficult. And you mentioned of the 200,000 people or so that you had, 150,000 were programmers. Are you changing your recruiting model as you get more innovative? Because maybe the computer coders might not be the passionate innovators, and how do you deal with that?
So we are doing 2 different things. One is we are slowly changing the recruiting model. Partly because of automation, we are just not hiring that many people anymore. So we used to hire, my first year we hired something like 40,000 people. Last year we hired less than 10,000. So we are still hiring large numbers of people, but we are moving up the chain somewhat to going to better colleges and going to the better students in those colleges, because we are still hiring, but not quite at that level. And the second thing we are doing is to create a culture of innovation is we are creating the training. Design thinking is one of the great methodologies, if you will, of innovating. To teach people how to identify a need, how to create a rapid, like you said, fail fast, rapid experimentation, rapid iterations, to try out some ideas and so on. So we have, back when I started, we initiated this design thinking training in Infosys, and it has become an institution in the company now. In the last close to 3 years now, we have trained 150,000 people on design thinking. So when they come in, we teach them design thinking. We get them to make something, and we get them in front of customers and stuff like this.
Interesting.
So that training is another huge part of creating that mindset.
So, all right, so we've learned how to train people, but you're a PhD from Stanford, I believe, in artificial intelligence, and now we're starting to train computers.
Yes.
And you've been passionate about, first of all, for entrepreneurs, this is a big opportunity.
Yeah.
Tell us about, what is artificial intelligence? Is it really coming in a couple of years? Is it going to really be that transformational? Are you going to go hiring 10,000 people to firing 30,000 people? What's going on?
That is the big question facing us. I mean, I mentioned robots. If you look at, so I studied AI at a time when I did my PhD in AI. In those days, people used to call it the AI winter. And, it's the science of making machines do things that we would consider intelligent if they were done by people. This was the definition of artificial intelligence from Marvin Minsky, one of the fathers of AI. And if you look at the state of AI today, we can infer a couple of things. First, there have been some really breathtaking advances in AI. It is difficult to describe. I mean, Google's AlphaGo program once again beat the world champion Go player. And this was, at the time when I was a student, Go used to be the benchmark, because people knew that chess was going to be done soon enough, and sure, in 1995 or something, the IBM program beat the chess player. But Go was a much more difficult, much more search-intensive game. And now we have the world champion beater Go program. And there are many, one of the breathtaking applications that I saw recently was the kids at OpenAI, which is an open consortium on AI. They demonstrated a robot that can learn to make an omelette by watching a video of somebody making an omelette.
You can teach that to my kids. That would be great.
I mean, of course, but this is not teaching a robot to make an omelette. This is teaching a robot to learn to make an omelette by watching a video of somebody making an omelette. This is pretty incredible. So this tells you that more and more sophisticated techniques are becoming possible to learn by machines. So that means that a whole category of jobs, there is absolutely no doubt, is going to go away. It's going to be automated. In fact, when we think about it over the course of our lifetimes, over the course of all of your careers, these technologies will advance dramatically. They will expand exponentially. And so what do we do? So I think it is important to think in two phases. The first phase is where all these things will create new opportunities for entrepreneurs. For people who have an entrepreneurial mindset, there are going to be huge opportunities in building these systems. And we have to understand that AI is not, falling from the skies. It is not that there are some gods sitting up there giving us this AI technology. We are building it. People are writing AI software. So we can all learn to do the same thing. And so building AI systems, maintaining AI systems, integrating AI systems is going to be a huge opportunity in the near future, over maybe the next 5, 10, 15 years. Sebastian Thrun told me that the going rate for an autonomous car engineer is around $10 million. He said this 6 months ago, and 6 or 7 months ago, and I started a program at Infosys to create a team of 5,000 autonomous car engineers. Then maybe we can rent them out for $500,000. And I asked him a couple of weeks ago, and he said it is still the same. It is coming down. They taught 7,000 people in Udacity autonomous cars. So, every car manufacturer, every truck manufacturer is going to have a need for autonomous car engineers, and there is all this kind of new technology that is going to be built. So you have to look at it. Our brains are wired in a way that we think about things in terms of the past. So we all get worried about, jobs of the past. And of course, the jobs of the past are going to go away. They have been going away, and they will go away even faster. But there is a completely new category of jobs that are coming up that are still being created, and there is a tremendous shortage of those. So that is one phase. But then when you look beyond that, in our children's lifetime, for you and me, Mark, I think many of these kids here we can still think in their lifetime.
I'd rather be with them, Vishal. What do you mean? What is that?
I think that longer term, when you think about AI, John McCarthy, the other father of AI, used to say that articulating a problem is half the solution. And this is particularly relevant to all of you. In our lifetimes, we are going to see AI technology get to the point where problems that can be articulated mechanically, that can be described, are going to be done automatically, like watching a video of somebody making an omelette. Anything that can be precisely articulated, mechanically specified, is going to be done automatically. So then, in such a situation, what is the human frontier? And when you think about this, you realize that then the human frontier is entrepreneurship. It is innovation. It is looking around at the world around us, looking at this room and seeing what is not here. What is it that I could bring into this room that would make it more innovative, that would make it better, that would improve the world? And that essence of entrepreneurship is what the future is all about. Today, we still have a situation where you have, one entrepreneur of the year from all your countries. We have to get to a point where all of us are entrepreneurs. And I don't see any way around that. We are going to get to the point where machines will be able to do everything that looks backwards. We have to be the ones who look forward.
So in a minute, we'll take a couple questions from the audience. So if you have them, please raise your hand. Last question I'll have before we do that is, what about those of us who are not technologically inclined, can't write code, can't develop artificial intelligence? Obviously, there's lots of people who aren't going to be able to do that, and it's got to coexist. So how do you see that coming together? What's the role of the judgment, of the leadership, of the building the teams, of the finding the opportunities out there, commingled with the artificial intelligence?
I would argue that is far more important than the ability to write code. The ability to deal with computers, to deal with software, to write software, to do computing is going to be essential. It is going to be like literacy. My wife runs our foundation, and she found this incredible statistic that way back in the dark ages, 6% of the world's population knew how to read and write. And today, the number of people who program a computer is 0.5%. So we are still pretty far back. But then you realize that it's not about programming the computer per se. It is about learning to do these things, to become literate, also improving the way that we program and becoming much easier at it, and so forth. But Mark, like you said, the problem finding, the leadership, the passion, the entrepreneurial spirit, the organizing teams, the sharing perspectives, getting people to align around a common purpose, these are the qualities that we need. The learning particular languages, that is something that we all have the ability to do. And we have to figure out ways to get people to bide the time while they can learn, if they are displaced, and things of this nature. But people ask me, what are you talking about, Vishal? How can we have 1 billion entrepreneurs? And you look at a 4-year-old child. Have you ever seen a 4-year-old child who is not curious? Every one of us is born with that curiosity. I believe that today we still live in times where there is, the Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg and people like this, and we say, oh, there are innovators and they innovate and then innovation happens. But it is really no more than seeing the world around us and seeing what is not here, what is missing. And that act of seeing what is not there, we can all learn to do that. And I believe that all of us have that in us. We may not all be, become multi-billionaires and so forth, but the ability to do problem finding, the ability to do experimentation and creating passion around it, is something that all of us are born with, and we can cultivate that.
Great. Thank you for that inspirational last question for me. Let's turn up the lights. We have just a couple minutes left. And just maybe I'll turn up the lights. But does anybody have any questions for Vishal out there? Look around. We got one right there.
Well, I will take the opportunity. Actually, I was waving to my son to come.
Where's your son? Point out your son. Where is he?
I'm Alfred Okwegu. I'm from...
There's your son right behind you. No.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, listen to great talk and seeing what technology is all about and asking of those who are conservative how are they going to cope moving forward. And you have some, especially back to my own country, to Africa, where not much of infrastructure development has taken place. I'm just wondering how we're going to measure up compared to how the whole world is moving. So I don't know what is going to happen. Are we going to be left out? And what's...
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, you have to think about it as an opportunity to get directly into the future, to leapfrog. When I used to work at SAP, I used to drive around Germany, and you would never see the electricity poles, above ground. And I used to wonder what's going on with that. And it turned out that because of the Second World War, all that stuff was destroyed. So they never actually built poles because the wires were all underneath, in the ground. Same thing happened in India with the mobile phones, and this is exactly what is happening in Africa. You have an opportunity to leapfrog all the legacy infrastructure that the rest of the countries will have to deal with and figure out what to do with. There was a tremendous program run by the Buckminster Fuller Institute in Africa, in several countries in sub-Saharan Africa, around creating this kind of an entrepreneurial spirit among people, especially among women. And I think that there is a tremendous opportunity to create an entrepreneurial mindset in Africa, and in fact, an opportunity to get ahead by leapfrogging all the legacy that the rest of the world has to deal with.
And in fact, with the mobility that we're seeing there in banking and other things, it is leapfrogging quite the developed countries with the broadband. Well, for those of you in the back who had your hand up, you were leapfrogged by the gentleman waving his son in. And we are out of time. And so, Vishal, first of all, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for coming out here to talk with our entrepreneurs. And please, keep fighting for the purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark.
That was great.
That was wonderful.
Yeah. I'll be back soon.